AITA for getting my boss fired after publicly humiliating me? My name is Jordan, and for years, I worked at a busy auto repair shop in a small town. It wasn't glamorous work, but it was honest. I liked the smell of oil and steel, the satisfaction of bringing a dead engine back to life. I liked working alongside the other mechanics, who, for the most part, treated me like family. Back then, the shop was a good place to be. Long hours, yes, but filled with laughter, inside jokes, and shared frustration whenever a particularly stubborn truck rolled in. Then Mr. Grant became our manager. From the very first day, he had this way of looking at me like I was a problem he needed to solve. He smiled, but it was a cold, calculated thing. At first, his comments were small, easily brushed off as misunderstandings. "Jordan, maybe let the others handle this one," he'd say, as if I wasn't capable. Or, "You're a little too careful, you know? Sometimes you need to just dive in." I told myself he was just trying to get to know the team, that maybe he didn't realize how condescending he sounded. But over the weeks, his behavior escalated. The jokes started, always aimed at me. If a job ran long, it was somehow my fault. If a tool went missing, he'd ask, loud enough for everyone to hear, "Jordan, you didn't misplace it again, did you?" Everyone laughed. I didn't. I swallowed my anger, like I always did, and focused on my work. My parents had drilled into me the importance of professionalism. "Never let them see you lose control," my dad always said. But Mr. Grant seemed determined to test my limits. The breaking point came on a freezing Thursday morning. I was standing near the front counter, rubbing my hands together for warmth, my hoodie pulled tight around me. Mr. Grant walked by with one of the supervisors, barely glancing my way before saying, loud enough for everyone to hear, "People who wear hoodies like that can't be trusted. You never know what they're hiding." The supervisor laughed. I froze. My chest burned. It wasn't just a random insult. It was calculated. He wanted me to react. He wanted to humiliate me in front of the others. I didn't give him the satisfaction. I just turned back to my work. Though my hands were shaking so badly, I almost dropped a wrench. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying his words over and over in my head, imagining what I should have said, what I should have done. HR wasn't an option. Everyone knew complaints went straight into the trash. In the past, guys who'd reported bullying mysteriously found their hours cut or were given the worst jobs until they quit. If I fought back directly, I'd be painted as the troublemaker. So I decided to fight differently. Quietly, Mr. Grant had this little side hustle at the shop. Every week, he'd buy snacks and drinks in bulk, sodas, chips, candy bars, and sell them to us for 50 cents each. It wasn't official company business, just his thing. The money supposedly went toward a big Christmas party at the end of the year. One day, one of the younger mechanics, Tyler, paid for a soda using a handful of small coins, mostly pennies and nickels. Mr. Grant exploded. "This isn't a piggy bank," he yelled in front of everyone. "If you can't respect my time, don't buy anything." Tyler went pale and apologized, but I filed that moment away. The next night, I went home and counted out exactly $5 in the tiniest coins I could find, pennies and nickels. It took nearly an hour, but when I was done, the pile of change looked like a mountain. The following morning, I grabbed a couple of sodas and a bag of chips before casually walking up to Mr. Grant. With the calmest voice I could muster, I said, "Here's my payment." Then, slowly, deliberately, I handed him the coins one by one. The shop went silent. The other mechanics stopped working, watching like it was some kind of showdown. Mr. Grant's face turned bright red. His jaw clenched so tightly I thought his teeth might crack. "This," he hissed, "is childish. You need to respect how I run things." I smiled, just following the rules. Then I walked away, leaving him trembling with rage. He didn't blow up right away. But later that morning, he stormed into the break room like a hurricane. His fist slammed onto the table, rattling coffee mugs. "Who thinks they're funny?" he roared. I calmly raised my hand. That would be me. The look on his face was priceless, pure disbelief. He'd never expected me to own it so openly. "You've ruined this for everyone," he shouted. "If this continues, I'm shutting it all down." And that's exactly what he did. No more snacks, no more drinks, no more holiday party. The rest of the team turned on me almost immediately. "Jordan, what the hell?" one of the senior guys snapped. "Now we all lose out because of your stupid prank." "It wasn't a prank," I said evenly. "It was a message," but they didn't understand. To them, Mr. Grant was just a tough manager. They didn't see the constant jabs, the subtle digs, the way he chipped away at me day after day. I went home that night feeling strangely calm. For the first time in months, I'd taken back a little power. But Mr. Grant wasn't done with me. The very next day, he called me into his office. The blinds were closed, the room uncomfortably hot. He didn't sit down. "You think you're clever, don't you?" he said, his voice low and dangerous. I stayed silent. "You embarrassed me in front of my team. That won't happen again." Then he leaned in so close I could smell his coffee breath. "If you so much as breathe wrong, I'll make sure you regret it." "Understood." I nodded, but inside, I was already planning my next move. The final showdown came 2 weeks later. We were in a staff meeting when Mr. Grant decided to really put me in my place. In front of everyone, he said, "Jordan, why don't you explain to the group why your performance has been slipping? Maybe you can convince us you still belong here." My ears rang. My vision tunneled. But instead of crumbling, I stood up, pulled out my phone, and said, "Actually, why don't you explain this?" Then I pressed play on a recording. recording. His voice filled the room. All his insults, all his threats, including the hoodie comment. I had started recording him weeks ago, just in case. The room went dead silent. The color drained from his face. By the end of the day, HR couldn't ignore it. Too many witnesses, too much evidence. They called him in and gave him a choice: resign quietly or be terminated publicly. He resigned. When he left for good, he tried to approach me, maybe to save face, maybe to intimidate me one last time. But I didn't even look at him. I just kept working through my break, like he'd never existed. The shop feels lighter now. The team is still divided. Some blame me for what happened. Others quietly thank me for standing up to him. As for me, I don't regret a thing, because sometimes you have to fight back, even if it means standing alone. After that stunt, the atmosphere at work shifted, but not in ways I could have anticipated. A few coworkers started avoiding me entirely, pretending I didn't exist, while others whispered constantly, glancing my way with a mix of suspicion and curiosity. Some smiled awkwardly when I passed, but their smiles didn't reach their eyes. And then there was Mr. Grant. He didn't confront me directly. He didn't apologize. He didn't yell. He simply stayed unnervingly quiet. Too quiet. It felt like the calm before a storm, and I hated every second of it. A week later, the storm hit. I was at home, scrolling aimlessly on my phone late at night, when a message popped up from Evan, one of the few co-workers I still trusted. "Check your email. You need to see this," it read. Curiosity mixed with dread, I opened my inbox. And there it was, a forwarded message from the regional manager. My stomach sank as I realized this wasn't just a routine work email. It contained screenshots of private group texts, and in them was Mr. Grant. He wasn't just venting. He wasn't even being subtle. He was cruel, calculated, and downright monstrous. The messages weren't limited to me. He mocked multiple employees, commenting on their appearances, backgrounds, and even making jokes about their families. There were lines like, "Push the weak ones out, and maybe the shop will finally look decent. And some people just don't deserve to be here. Good riddance." My hands shook as I scrolled. Every insult I had brushed off as just stress or a bad day suddenly had context. Every smirk, every passive-aggressive comment, every snide remark. It was all part of a pattern I hadn't fully understood until now. The next morning, the shop was electric with tension. Rumors swirled, voices hushed into conspiratorial whispers, and all eyes flicked toward Mr. Grant. He tried to act normal, forcing a tight-lipped smile, but it only made him look guilty. By lunch, corporate had sent someone from the regional office to speak with the team. Private meetings were scheduled, one by one, and I could feel my pulse hammering in my ears. When it was my turn, I stepped into the small, sterile office and faced the investigator. I told the story, every insult, every humiliation, every time he crossed the line. I included the hoodie comment that had finally shattered my composure. I spoke clearly, carefully, no anger in my voice, only facts. The silence afterward was suffocating. By the end of the day, the decision came down. Mr. Grant was gone. Not fired publicly, no dramatic showdown. Corporate allowed him to resign quietly, citing personal reasons. But the truth was written all over the faces of my coworkers. Everyone knew. And yet, the aftermath wasn't simple. 2 weeks later, Evan confessed that he had leaked the messages. "I couldn't watch you take all the heat while he continued to bully everyone," he admitted. I shadowed with worry. I thanked him, but warned him about the risks. Even though Mr. Grant was gone, the damage remained. Some coworkers still resented me, blaming me for the shop's ruined snack fund, the chaos that had unfolded, and the sudden upheaval in the team dynamic. Tensions didn't end there. One afternoon, as I tried to finish a project, two coworkers cornered me in the break room. Their voices were low but sharp, full of accusation. "You made everything worse," one hissed. "We liked it better when he ran the shop how he wanted." I wanted to scream, to defend myself, but something inside me stayed silent. I realized then that truth and justice didn't guarantee popularity or approval. They only guaranteed accountability. Still, the fight wasn't over. Mr. Grant, in a final act of spite, began sending indirect messages through mutual contacts, trying to paint himself as the victim of a vindictive employee. Rumors spread online and in local forums. Some coworkers, exhausted from the drama, sided with him silently. I felt a chill realizing that even after his resignation, his shadow lingered, infecting parts of the workplace I had no control over. The final straw came when I decided to leave. On my last day, I packed my tools slowly, each item feeling heavier than the last. Evan appeared beside me, a small smile on his face. "You did the right thing," he said quietly. I looked around the shop one last time, at the familiar benches, the dust-streaked shelves, the empty jars of snacks, and said, "Maybe. But sometimes doing the right thing doesn't make you popular." Walking out the door was a relief, yet also bittersweet. I had survived the storm, but the scars were there, on me, on the shop, and on the people left behind. I didn't know where Mr. Grant ended up, and I didn't care.
You are not the AITA. Your story is a prime example of how someone can be systematically targeted, diminished, and cornered until the only choice left is to resist in a way that forces accountability. From the beginning, Mr. Grant singled you out, belittling your skills, mocking your clothing, and making you the butt of his jokes. That's not leadership. That's targeted humiliation disguised as management. Anyone in your position would have eventually snapped, though the way you handled it, measured, clever, and rooted in exposing truth, shows restraint rather than recklessness. Here's my personal insight. People often underestimate the emotional toll of small insults that pile up day after day. A single comment about your hoodie may seem harmless to outsiders, but when it comes after weeks of digs and calculated slights, it becomes a final straw. Your decision to use coins, then recordings, wasn't about childish revenge, it was about reclaiming dignity in an environment where the usual channels, like HR, were useless. You flipped the script without losing your cool, which takes more discipline than most people realize. My suggestion: don't second-guess yourself because some coworkers turned on you. In toxic systems, bystanders often blame the whistleblower because it's easier than confronting the abuser. They miss the bigger picture, that you forced accountability where no one else dared. If anything, their resentment proves how conditioned they were to accept dysfunction as normal. Leaving the shop was the wisest move. You protected your sanity and avoided being dragged into the long shadow of Mr. Grant's drama. And some joke, because heavy stories need a sliver of light, your coin stunt was basically the mechanical shop version of an art installation. Performance theater meets industrial payback. Somewhere out there, a gallery wall deserves a plaque. $5 in pennies, the day power changed hands. So, no, you are not the AITA. You endured more than most, fought back with brains instead of fists, and walked away with your integrity intact. If anything, you're proof that sometimes the loudest resistance isn't shouting, but calmly dropping a mountain of nickels onto the desk of a bully and watching his composure crack. Before we jump into the next story, don't forget to like and subscribe, and let us know your favorite part in the comments.
AITA for refusing to watch my cousin's kids until she respects my work? It was late morning when my phone buzzed relentlessly, Lena again. The messages weren't just casual requests. They were sharp, demanding, and relentless. Can you please watch the kids? I really need this. One read. Another followed. You're home. You don't even need to leave your desk, just for a few hours. Come on. I stared at the screen, my stomach tightening. My inbox was already full with emails from clients, revisions, and pending payments. My deadlines weren't flexible. I had spent the past 3 nights working until past midnight just to stay ahead. And now, here she was, acting as if my work wasn't real. I typed back slowly. I can't. I have work I can't postpone. No response for an hour, which was fine. Then, a knock at my door. I didn't need to look through the peephole to know it was her. Lena never knocked quietly. Hey, she said brightly, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. Behind her, her 2 kids tumbled in, laughing and carrying small backpacks. We just thought we'd drop by. I swallowed. Lena, I've told you, I can't take them right now. I have work. Her smile faltered, replaced by a thin line of frustration. You're just at home, though. How busy can you really be? You can spare a couple of hours. I clenched my jaw. My work pays my bills. My deadlines are real. I can't just take a break because you need me. The kids started tugging at her hands, asking if they could stay. I looked at them and felt my heart twist. I liked them, of course, but this wasn't fair. Not to me, not to them. Lena waved dismissively. I don't have time to argue with you. We're leaving. I'll figure it out myself. And just like that, they were gone, leaving a quiet that felt heavier than any argument. The next day, my phone buzzed again, not from her, but from my Aunt Marlene. She called incessantly, her tone strained with disappointment. You're being selfish, she said immediately, before I could even respond. This is family. You're turning everyone against each other. I tried to explain. I'm not being selfish. I have work. I have responsibilities. Just because I'm home doesn't mean I'm free to babysit. Marlene's sigh was sharp, almost painful. You're hurting Lena's children. They don't understand why you won't help. You're punishing them for their mother's mistakes. I felt my hands shake slightly. I'm not punishing anyone. I'm asking for boundaries. I want to be respected. She didn't respond for a long moment. I just don't know if you understand what family means. And then she hung up. That afternoon, Lena's messages began piling in again. They weren't just texts. They were a flood. Why are you doing this? The kids miss you. You're ruining everything. They need you. I opened one and my eyes blurred slightly. The guilt twisted in my chest, tight and suffocating. But deep down, I knew giving in now would only make it worse. A few days later, I went to the local coffee shop to try to work in peace. I sat with my laptop, headphones on, hoping the public space would keep her from barging in. And yet, she found me. Really? She said, standing over my table. You can come here and work, but not help your own family? I stood up, trying to keep my voice calm. Lena, I didn't come here to fight. I came to work. I'm telling you again, I can't can't babysit right now. Her face darkened. You think your little job is more important than them? Than me? I can't believe this. People in the cafe had started to notice. I could feel their eyes on us, the tension thickening the air. I never said that, I said, my voice steady but shaking inside. I care about you and I care about them. But I can't give up my work because you think I'm just sitting at home. She took a step closer, her tone low. You're choosing your work over family. You don't even see it, do you? I swallowed hard. I see it. That's why I can't help unless you understand that I'm serious about my boundaries. For a moment, there was silence. Then she spun and stormed out, the kids trailing behind her, their small voices asking if I'd come play later. I didn't respond. I couldn't. That evening, my phone buzzed again. Another message from Marlene. Lena is crying. She says you've hurt her so much. Are you really okay with that? I stared at the screen for a long time. I did feel guilty, but I also felt resolved. I couldn't let guilt control me. I had to hold firm, even if it meant being misunderstood. The following week, Lena began posting about me on Facebook. Not directly, but subtly. Things like, some people don't understand family, or kids miss the people who are supposed to care for them. Friends started commenting, asking questions, and I could feel the whispers spreading like wildfire. I tried to stay calm, focusing on my work. But one evening, I received a video call from one of Lena's close friends. She had the kids in the background, their little faces looking confused. They don't understand, she said softly. You really don't want to help them? I felt my chest tighten. I thought of them laughing, drawing, asking me to play. I wanted to bend. I wanted to say yes. But I knew giving in now wouldn't help anyone. So I stayed firm. It's not about them, I said, my voice breaking slightly. It's about respect. I need to be respected for my time and work. That's the only way this can work. After that call, the tension didn't lift. Marlene didn't speak to me for 2 days. Lena stopped calling for a while, but the messages on social media kept coming. People questioned me, subtly, indirectly, leaving me exhausted and drained. And yet, through all of it, I noticed something shifting. Lena started asking less urgently, less often. She started to stop assuming I was available, and even Marlene began speaking to me with a little more caution, a little more awareness. It wasn't perfect. There were still uncomfortable silences at family gatherings. There were still subtle reminders that I had hurt the children, but I could work without constant interruptions. I could breathe without guilt pressing on me from every angle. I didn't know if I had done the right thing. Some nights, I lay awake replaying the confrontations in my head, wondering if I had been too cold, too strict. But I also knew one thing. I had stood up for myself. I had shown that my work mattered, that my time was real. And sometimes, that was enough. A week later, Lena's frustration escalated in ways I hadn't expected. It started with messages, lots of them. WhatsApp notifications kept popping up on my phone. Some were polite, almost apologetic. I know you're busy, but can you help just this once? Others were sharper. You're being selfish. The kids need you. You're home all day anyway. By Thursday, there were over 30 messages in a row, each more insistent than the last. At first, I ignored them. I needed to focus on work, and letting her anger seep into my mind would only make me stressed and distracted. But ignoring her only seemed to fuel her persistence. Around mid-afternoon, my phone rang. It was a video call from Lena. I hesitated, then answered. Her face filled the screen, tense and frustrated. Behind her, the kids bounced on the couch, toys clutched in their hands, their little faces lit with hope and confusion. I could hear them calling my name. Ava, come play, please. Their voices twisted my heart. For a moment, I wanted to give in. I wanted to swoop in, distract them, make them laugh, and forget all the tension. But I also knew that giving in now would only teach Lena that persistence and guilt could bend my boundaries. I drew in a deep breath and said calmly, I can't right now, Lena. I have deadlines. I'm happy to help when you respect my time. The call ended abruptly. The screen went black, and silence settled over my apartment like a heavy blanket. But the storm was far from over. Hours later, I started noticing posts on Facebook. Lena wasn't tagging me directly, but the messages were unmistakable. Hints about me, avoiding family, subtle accusations that I didn't care about her children. Mutual friends commented casually, asking questions that felt pointed, making me feel like I was on trial for something I hadn't done. I tried to focus on work, but the tension clung to me like a shadow. Even when I looked away from my phone, I could imagine her messages, the disapproving glances of friends, the quiet quiet judgment of people I had considered allies. Then came the most unexpected twist. One evening, I received a Gmail message from one of Lena's close friends, someone I'd met at family gatherings but never really talked to. She said she had spoken to the kids. They were upset, confused, and didn't understand why I wouldn't watch them. She suggested I might reconsider, for their sake. Reading that made my chest ache. The children weren't at fault. Their innocence and trust were being used as a weapon, albeit unconsciously, in the adult conflict. I spent hours pacing, thinking, debating, weighing guilt against principle. Every instinct urged me to respond, to make the children happy, but every rational thought reminded me that bending now would only prolong the cycle. By the next day, I decided to call Lena. I rehearsed my words, making sure to speak calmly and clearly, avoiding anger or defensiveness. I needed her to understand that this wasn't about them, it wasn't personal, it was about respect, boundaries, and acknowledgement of my time. When she answered, there was tension in the silence. I said softly, Lena, I'm not refusing because of the kids. I'm refusing because I need you to respect my time and my work. That's all. There was a long pause, then a sigh, deep and weary. I guess I've been taking your time for granted, she admitted. I'm sorry. I should have asked, not assumed. Her words didn't erase the tension, but they were a small victory. Finally, there was acknowledgement. Finally, she had recognized my boundaries. But the drama didn't end there. Some friends continued commenting on social media, subtle digs about family obligations or how children deserve attention. And Marlene, my aunt, sent another round of messages questioning my choices. Even after Lena apologized, it felt like my integrity was being tested repeatedly, in private messages, in public posts, in glances during family events. I didn't agree to babysit immediately. Instead, I proposed a compromise. We could set specific times if she genuinely respected my schedule. That small step felt like a triumph, but it also felt fragile. One wrong move, and it could all come crashing down. Days later, during a quiet moment alone, I reflected on everything that had happened. I realized that standing firm had been far more painful than I anticipated. It had been lonely, exhausting, and emotionally draining. I had worried constantly about being misunderstood, about causing hurt, about the judgment of family and friends. Yet, at the same time, I felt a spark of pride. For the first time in weeks, I felt seen, not as someone who is just at home, not as a default babysitter, but as a professional, as a person with real responsibilities and boundaries. I felt that maybe, just maybe, some respect had been earned. The ending wasn't perfect. There was still lingering tension, subtle resentment, and occasional reminders that not everyone agreed with me. Some days, it felt like a quiet battle, like a low hum of unresolved conflict in the background of family life. But there was also hope, a sense that, if boundaries were respected, relationships could slowly heal. And in that delicate balance between tension and relief, I realized something important. Standing firm had been painful, but it had also been necessary. Protecting your boundaries, even when it's uncomfortable or unpopular, is often the only way to earn true respect, sometimes even from the people who claim to know you best. I didn't know exactly how everything would unfold. There were still days I worried about resentment, misunderstandings, and the emotional toll. But for the first time, I felt I had taken control of my own life, rather than being swept along by everyone else's expectations. And that, in its own quiet, messy way, felt like a victory.
You are not the AITA. Let me break this down clearly, and I'll mix in my own perspective so it doesn't just sound like a legal verdict. First, Lena's behavior. Walking into your home uninvited, dropping off her kids, and insisting you are free just because you work from home is textbook disregard for boundaries. That isn't a favor request, it's coercion dressed up as family need. If someone ignores your no, keeps escalating, and even recruits outside people to shame you, the problem is with them, not you. Second, your Aunt Marlene. She applied the classic family guilt trip, turning your refusal into you don't love the children. That's a manipulation move, because you never said you didn't care. You said you couldn't sacrifice your work obligations. Those are two very different things. In fact, your stance protects your livelihood, which in turn secures your stability and ironically makes you more capable of helping in the long run. Third, the children. This is the hardest part. You love them, and that love was weaponized against you. It's painful because their innocence magnifies the guilt, but that guilt isn't yours to hold. Lena created the conflict by refusing to respect limits. The kids shouldn't be pawns in adult battles, yet she put them in that position. You resisted not because you didn't care about them, but because you recognized the cycle of exploitation that would continue if you caved. That's maturity, not neglect. Now, my personal insight. What you did here is what a lot of people fail to do. Many cave, hoping it will smooth things over, but then they end up drowning in resentment. You chose discomfort in the short term to prevent permanent exploitation in the long term. That's difficult, lonely, and exhausting, but it's the only route to lasting respect. I've seen enough family dynamics to know that people often test limits until they encounter a firm wall. You finally provided that wall. Humor moment. Imagine your life as a restaurant. Lena walked in without paying, sat at a table, and told the chef, "Cook for me, I'm family, and I won't even leave a tip." You simply reminded her that the kitchen isn't always open. That's not selfish, it's just how restaurants and humans work. Suggestions moving forward: structure instead of improvisation, offer specific time slots if you want to help in the future. That takes away her ability to ambush you. Direct communication: keep your words neutral and repetitive, like a voicemail greeting. "I can't now, but I can X." Don't get pulled into debates. Ignore the noise, social media digs, side messages, friend comments, they're designed to shake you. Your consistency is the antidote. Final verdict: you are not the AITA. You asserted a reasonable boundary. Lena is the AITA for intruding, manipulating, and refusing to take responsibility. Marlene is the side AITA for reinforcing guilt rather than mediating with fairness. The key here is that boundaries always feel mean to those who benefit from you having none. But boundaries aren't cruelty, they're survival. And while you may still feel pangs of doubt, the fact that Lena eventually admitted she took your time for granted proves you weren't wrong. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Got a story to share? Drop it in the comments and let us know which one was your favorite. If you enjoyed this video, you'll definitely want to check out Aida for refusing to pay for my brother's wife's funeral. Click here to watch it now.